Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my November 2023 reading wrap-up. If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but today we're just talking about the books. I'm going to start with my nerdy hardcore stats and charts and then get into what I read. Also, I put chapter markers in all of my videos, so if there's anything you need to revisit or you need to skip over, those are down below. On the way down to check those out, make sure that you are subscribed, put that notification bell on in case you want to actually be updated when I update, because sometimes YouTube doesn't like to do that. And if you feel so inclined, like this video, give me a comment, all of those good things. In November, I read 17 things for a total of 5,243 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so about 1,998 of those pages were actually about 68 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 9 adult books, 5 YA books, 2 middle grade books, and 1 children's book. I read 12 novels, 4 graphic novels, and 1 picture book. This month I mostly read mystery, thriller, and nonfiction, which makes sense because it was Nonfiction November, followed by horror, fantasy, contemporary, and historical fiction. If you adjust by page numbers, not much changes. The biggest chunk of these books were from the library, but I did read 1 each from a book box, a publisher, and NetGalley. I read 5 audiobooks, 5 paperbacks, 5 hardcovers, and 2 ebooks. The biggest chunk of my books were in the 300 to 399 page range, and most were published since 2020. Nearly half of the authors were female, and I had a bunch of books without a particular protagonist due to how much nonfiction I read. In terms of setting, most of these were set in the US, as well as other worlds, the UK, and Canada. In terms of diversity of subject matter, a bunch were queer or had to do with race, others were intersectional, feminist, or about religion, and about a quarter had no diversity to speak of. In terms of star ratings this month, I had 1 0-star read, which we'll discuss in a moment, 2 3-star reads, 7 4-star reads, 3 4.5-star reads, and 4 5-star reads. Let's start with our lowest rated read and work our way up to the highest, shall we? Also, I want to get this out of the way to begin with. I had a TBR for Nonfiction November, and despite the fact that I did read more nonfiction this month than I typically do, I only read 1 of the books on my Nonfiction November TBR because I had all of these holds come in from the library, and those took priority because obviously I have those for a shorter amount of time than books I currently own. So yeah, that happened. Let's start with the book that I gave 0 stars. Now picture this. You have this book that you're very excited to read, and you've actually decided you're going to start reading it during your book bath that is the closest to Halloween. You're in the bath, you're reading it, you're really enjoying it, and you get about 100 pages in, maybe a little bit more than that, and you suddenly think to yourself, wait, who published this? I really hope it wasn't St. Martin's Press or one of their imprints. And yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. So despite the fact that I would have normally given this a very high star rating because I very much enjoyed it, this title was a St. Martin's Press book, which I ordered and received before the boycott started, so I didn't even think to check it before I started reading it. So here we are. I'm not going to tell you anything about the book besides I really enjoyed it and wish I could tell you about it. However, we are still boycotting St. Martin's Press and its imprints, and I will leave information about that down below. On to my 3.5-star reads. The first one being The Best We Could Do. This one is a graphic memoir about this person who currently lives in California but wants to know more about her family, and actually does some interviews with her family to try to figure out exactly where they came from. And although both of her parents came from relatively similar areas, they actually had very different upbringings, and that's obviously affected them all throughout their lives. This one was interesting. It actually started as like a nonfiction book, and then the author decided to kind of figure out how to draw to make it into a graphic memoir instead, which I thought was really interesting. Next, we have a graphic novel called Where Black Stars Rise. This one is about this person who is in therapy but starting to think that there are other things going on. It's pretty short, so I don't want to give it away, but it does lead itself to kind of the horror aspect of things and kind of the eldritch aspect of things, but then we mostly see the perspective of the therapist in training and her going home to her girlfriend and having discussions and these types of things, and her just trying to figure out how to help out this certain patient. It was short and interesting with creepy undertones. Also, I am kind of racing against the clock right now because I have less than a half hour before my alarm goes off to start getting ready to go to Zumba, and I'm really hoping to film all of this before that because tomorrow is the start of the Queerly Readathon and I need to get a lot of things done today so I can read 9 books next week. On to my 4-star reads, the first one being another graphic novel, and that's Nayra and the Djinn. This is about this middle school girl who is being heavily bullied by one person in particular, especially because she is currently fasting. There is one other Muslim student at the school who is also a really good friend of hers, but their connection kind of wanes throughout this. While she's lurking on this forum for other middle schoolers who are in America and Muslim, something weird happens to all of their technology, and something basically asks for help, and she says, yes, I will help you, and that something ends up being a djinn. I thought this one was interesting and imaginative. It talked a lot about storytelling as an art form. It also talked about the traditions of storytelling and passing down stories, and the art was also just beautiful. I didn't realize I kind of put all the graphic novels pretty much at the beginning of this list when I was organizing it, but the next book is Seance Tea Party. This is about a girl who really likes make-believe. She really enjoys escaping into worlds that she has created. However, she's in middle school, people are growing up a little bit, they're kind of leaving behind childish things, and she doesn't really know how to relate to her peers all too much because she feels like they're moving on without her. One day she decides to have a seance tea party, and who shows up but a ghost who then becomes her best friend. Again, this one was cute. It was so adorable. I highly enjoy the art story. The story was really heart-wrenching at points, and I think that you should pick it up if you feel so inclined. Next we have No One Left But You. This is about a character named Max, and it's told in the present as well as the past. And the narrative kind of goes back and forth between these things where you're trying to figure out how we ended up here, because as we meet Max, he's actually been booked for a potential murder. Max has definitely been going through some things as of recent. He has recently transitioned, and the summer before all of that happened, he was seeing somebody semi-secretly, and that person rejected him as soon as he came out as trans. Now that person is constantly bullying him. When a new girl comes to school and thinks that Max is awesome and that his ex sucks, they form quite a close relationship. From there, all we really know is somebody dies and we need to figure out who did it and why. This one really kept me guessing, and I appreciate it for that. Another one that kept me guessing is Only She Came Back. This one is told in a couple of different formats. Mostly it's just the narrative of the story, but then you also have transcripts of different YouTube videos or different security feeds, all of those types of things. And it's all about this girl who has a social media or influencer boyfriend. They've decided to go away for the summer. They're supposedly they think the world is basically ending. And then one day when they haven't been seen for ages, she's caught on camera at a convenience store, basically has to call the police because he's missing. She, however, is wearing a sweatshirt around her waist that is soaked in blood. Our main character of the story is actually a girl this girl went to high school with, and she used to have a podcast. It went fairly well, and by that I mean she really enjoyed making it, but nobody really listened to it, and she thinks to herself, it would be really interesting to reconnect with this person because there is such a mystery as to what happened to the boyfriend. Is he still alive? Where is he? As she tries to get closer to this girl to get the story, her feelings are kind of muddled up. In addition to this, she's dealing with other drama to do with her personal life and the fact that she still has to have a job, and then the fact that in her senior year, which just passed, she kind of messed up. Her grades weren't great. She's not actually going off to college like everybody else, and she has to deal with that. This one does keep you guessing. You don't know who to believe, you don't know what's gone on, and it's just a thrill ride. Next we have The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, which of course has been recommended many times by Reads with Rachel, so I finally got around to reading it. This one is about men and masculinity and love, and I found it really informative and interesting. I knew kind of a lot of the core concepts contained within this, but it was really informative for me to see it all listed out in these places, and to have this one text to look to when talking about why the patriarchy actually doesn't serve men either. In short, Rachel's right, go read it. Next we have another nonfiction book that was not on my TBR for Nonfiction November, however it was an interlibrary loan, so I needed to read it immediately because it needed to go back to the library from whence it first came, and that is called Satan's Silence. This is a book about satanic panic, how that happened, and what the repercussions impressions of it were. Originally for Nonfiction November, I was going to pick up a different book that was published in 1980. However, it was published by the same publisher we are currently boycotting, so I cannot do that. I've actually been interested in reading that one particularly because it is local to me. However, obviously I'm not going to read it because of the boycott. It is looked to as one of the things that really started the Satanic Panic though. And since then it has been thoroughly debunked. In fact, Satan's Silence actually talks a little bit about it. There's a lot of really interesting information in this. They definitely did a lot of research, and I'm just going to boil it down to basically, it was a combination of things that started Satanic Panic. Sometimes it was certain people having mental breaks and other people believing them instead of thinking they were having mental breaks. There was also a really big push at this point to believe survivors, which is important. However, none of these children actually came forward and said that they were abused. Their parents or guardians thought that they might be abused and basically hounded them until they said, yes, I've been abused, so the parent or guardian would stop hounding them into saying that they had been abused. For the vast majority, I'm pretty sure that nobody meant to inflict this type of panic. However, it happened, and this book goes through it really well. Next we have Your Lonely Nights Are Over. This is a book that I read in under 24 hours because I just wanted to know what was going to happen, even though I figured out who the killer was pretty early on. In this one we have two point of view characters. They are best friends, they are both gay, they have this really close relationship that other people don't really understand all of the time, and they haven't really been attending the queer club at their high school because the guy that leads it kind of has a vendetta against them and they just don't want to deal with that drama. However, on this particular day when we meet them, they have to attend because they've been accused of sending out these harassing texts and they want to clear the air. That was not them. Also very popular at this point is this Netflix documentary about this serial killer from about 50 years ago that used to send people letters about how they are too lonely, and then within 24 hours they would actually be killed and there would be a letter left on them that said, your lonely nights are over. Apparently these text messages that were sent out to a couple of people in the queer club were about how these people were too lonely, so you can understand why people were a little bit creeped out by them. However, this book gets bloody and gory from there, and we just need to figure out who is killing people off, why they're killing people off, and we need to stop them. Now, like I said, I figured out who the killer was pretty soon ahead of time, and I was just waiting for people to catch up on that fact. However, there were enough twists and turns in here that I really enjoyed being along for the ride, even though I'd figured out this one key piece of information ahead of time. On to my 4.5-star books, the first one being the children's book that I read, and it's called The Big Book of Pride Flags. This is exactly what it sounds like. It is a book for children filled with pride flags. It also talks about who created the flag, if we happen to know that information, as well as when it was created, where it was created, and what all of the colors mean. Which means that at some point this month I knew what all of the colors of all the flags mean. Do I still know that information? No, it is completely gone from my head, but this would be a good reference. I feel like it could have had a little bit more information in it. However, I do understand that this is also a book for children, so it makes sense that it maybe didn't have a full write-up on everything because the intended audience only needed a few lines per flag. Next we have Ace's Wild Heist. This is about a guy whose family actually owns a casino in Las Vegas, and it's been a family business for quite some time, and there's maybe some not super legal things that have happened. He's off at a boarding school where he actually operates a blackjack club, and he finds out that his mother has been arrested, so he needs to go back to the family home, which is in fact this casino hotel, and try to figure out if he can make sure that she doesn't go to jail. They have this one big rival on the strip, and it's this guy that they refer to as Uncle Peter. However, his mom and Uncle Peter fell out a really long time ago, so he's really confused as why they have to be polite to this guy, because it's quite clear that this guy is the reason his mom is in jail. The only real friends that Jack has is this group chat of other people who are also Ace, and he devises a plan when his sister says invite some of your friends over so you stay out of trouble, to get them to come visit in Las Vegas to do some sleuthing to see if they can turn the tides on Uncle Peter. From there, a mysterious girl shows up, there's some other undercover things, some feelings start to develop between certain characters, and all in all, this is a lovely time. The one thing I didn't really enjoy about this book is the ending seemed really rushed, to the point where I thought that maybe this is the first in a series and we were going to see other things happening after this in future books, because it all wrapped up really quickly at the end, and I thought we were going to see more of this kind of play out, at least in a duology. However, it was just way too much fun to see this group of aces get together and plan a heist. Like, it was just fantastic, and I loved it for that. Next we have To Shape a Dragon's Breath. This one was such a cool story. It's about this indigenous character who lives on this island, and one day she sees this dragon fly by, which is notable not because this world doesn't have dragons, because it definitely does, but because dragons haven't been on her island in at least a couple of 100 years. The next day she goes to walk out to where she saw this dragon. She finds a dragon's egg. When that egg hatches, the dragon chooses her as the guardian. This only really presents a problem because once the English find out that she has a dragon, they obviously don't think that she's worthy of the dragon, so preemptively she is sent to a dragon boarding school so she can learn how to shape a dragon's breath, so she can learn all of the things she needs to know about being the guardian and the companion to this dragon. At this school she's obviously mistreated because she's one of 2 indigenous people and she's one of 2 women admitted to this school. Unlike the last one, this is the first book in a series and I cannot wait to read the next one because this was just so much fun, so interesting, and also so maddening because you can see her just going up against these people who are just ill-informed and think that their way is the best way when it's clearly not sometimes. This was an absolutely fantastic fantasy book. You should definitely read it. On to my 5-star books, the first one being Making It So by Patrick Stewart. This is his autobiography. He reads the audiobook himself. That should be enough of a selling point for you. This book is pretty long. It's about 18 or 19 hours when you listen to it as audio, but the time just flies by, especially in that format, because he's just telling you stories from his life, and then occasionally he'll break into some Shakespearean or Dickensian speech, and it's just so fun to listen to him talk about these things. Obviously not everything he's ever gone through in his life is good, and sometimes he will call himself out when his behavior was not great. And I've just had such a good time learning about him and the different franchises he's been in and the different people that he's been friends with behind the scenes for longer than some, and it was just really fun. If you're a fan of any of his work, I definitely recommend this one. Another book that was narrated by the author is Huge by Brent. You might know that name because that's the guy from Corner Gas, and yeah, he wrote a thriller book set in the 90s about somebody who is killing people on a comedy tour. This one was fantastic. We have our main character, which is Dale Webley. He's a pretty seasoned comedian. He's been doing this for almost 20 years, and he finds himself needing just a little bit more money because his kid's tuition is due really soon. So he books a tour at the beginning of another tour he's going to do in Canada, but we as the audience know that the person booking it also really needs that money, so we know he's probably going to be taken for a ride on this one. He's the headliner of the tour, but he also has 2 other people on the tour with him. One is Ryn Lanigan. She's in her 20s. She's from Ireland, and Brent can actually do an Irish accent, which I was very much appreciative of, because if you've ever heard David Boreanaz do an Irish accent, you want to stab out your ears, especially if you were watching Buffy when you lived in Ireland and had to watch those scenes and then go talk to people who actually have an Irish accent. It was bad. Anyway, she's on this tour because she's honing her hosting skills, because she has a chance to maybe have her own talk show, and she really wants to impress at that audition. The third person on this tour is somebody who calls himself Hobie Huge because he thinks he's going to be huge in the comedy scene. He's actually on this tour not being paid, and he's the person driving them around, but this guy definitely has some problems as they come to find out, because he's got some definite anger issues and could potentially be a very dangerous man. This one was fantastic and dark, and I very much enjoyed my time with it. Another thing that was very fantastic and dark, and I very much enjoyed my time with it, is Hangman by Jack Heath. This is the beginning of a 4-book series. My library only has the next book, and funnily enough they have it in a title that doesn't match the titles from Australia, because why would they? I really hate when different markets have different titles for the same book. It makes it really difficult for me to realize if my library has a book that I want or not, especially when my friends from other places are talking about the book, and then I look up the book and it doesn't exist, but it does exist under a different title. This one is about a man named Timothy Blake. He is a consultant for the FBI, but he doesn't take a very usual fee. Once he's done his work and somebody is returned safely, his fee is actually the recently deceased body of a convict, because he is going to eat that person because he is in fact a cannibal. Through this we get to see him being very clever, solving oh no, Zumba! Through this we get to see him being very clever, solving certain things, but then it's also very disgusting in points because he is in fact a cannibal, and this does not shy away from certain descriptions of certain activities. This was thrilling and interesting, and it kind of left off in a very interesting way, so I'm excited my library has the second book, although I'm kind of upset they don't have the third or the fourth. And the last time I tried to get them to get other books in a series, they just took out the one book they had from the series from the library, so we'll see how I go with the second book, and if I really want to read the other two, I'll figure out a way to do it. Quickly, because like I said, I need to go to a Zumba class soon, the last book on this list and my favorite book of the month is All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. I've read 3 books by this author so far, and I'm pretty sure I've given 5 stars to all of them. He really delves into the characters to the point where you feel like you actually know them, and that is something I very much appreciate. This is a book that takes place in the South, and we are following Titus, who is the first black man to ever be sheriff in this very small town. Obviously that comes with some challenges because there are certain people who are definitely still overtly very, very racist, and other people who are just underhanded about it. But he is a highly trained individual. Previous to this, he was actually working at the FBI, so he has a lot of knowledge base. He's a very smart man. He knows a lot of things, and he kind of has too much of a skill set to be working in this small town where nothing really happens. However, on the morning where we meet him, which is actually the 1-year anniversary of him becoming sheriff, there is an active situation at the high school, and it goes from there. This one twists, this one turns, this one has to do with different politics between different types of people. I very much enjoyed it. Just read everything by this author. He is fantastic. If you want to hear me talk more about these books or other books that matter, the playlist for my weekly entertainment wrap-ups is always linked down below. Of course my camera battery died during the outro. Why wouldn't it? If you've read any of these or you're planning to read any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down in the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit. I hope you're participating in the Queer Lit Readathon next week, and I will see you very soon. Bye!